90 years ago this year. We've grown to just short of 800 lawyers in 15 offices around the world, and do a variety of things, including in the financial institutions, corporate and IP areas related to this subject. We're very excited, pleased to be hosting this panel, and I look forward to the panel and meeting you afterwards.
Thanks, Bill. And I have to only say thanks to Sheb and Mullen, and particularly Rob, who has been incredibly supportive of this FinTech community, helping us build it up and providing the venue and the drinks. And we really appreciate it. Thanks, Rob. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Pierre. You've got this panel will last from 7 till 8. And that will include Q&A, so at least for the last quarter of an hour of Q&A. And there's no pitches tonight, so there'll be networking after that. Thank you.
Great, and Pimo, you'll keep me honest.
I will, I'll keep you honest.
So thank you for everybody for coming. It's always exciting to have one of these panels, and Pimo's done an extremely awesome job of always getting really high quality people to join. So I'm really excited to have this group, and it definitely got big, and we're going to try to move through it. But I'm going to try to really hit people on addressing things that you can come away from this with some depth of knowledge of what's going on. I tend to say that if you are not familiar with what blockchains are, this is probably not a good event, because I don't like to rehash that kind of information, but we're going to try to move right into the issues and see how it goes. So I actually wanted to start by letting you know that if you see me using my phone, it's not because I'm on the phone. I forgot to print out the questions, so I'm reading them from my iPhone. So with that, let's build some context on each of you guys. So if you could start by letting us know the market areas that your companies focus on, and within those, what areas do you spend time on? So this is before we get into any blockchain talk. Let's do a quick around the horn.
So I think the way to answer that for me is I'm a lawyer. It's my partner. Wonderful building that we work with. And I've been involved in blockchain technology since 2012. Before that, I mean, I've been a lawyer since 1994. Without question, since the advent of the commercial internet, blockchain was the most fascinating and challenging. It started in 2012 when a former client said, hey, I've got a new way of doing mining equipment. And we started doing semiconductor development for mining equipment because I had a background in semiconductors. But pretty much the clientele has been involved in everything from multi-sig, my clients is BitGo, so securitization of blockchains, new payment systems, just about every once in a while somebody pulls me in for a real estate deal. And what's true is, the good news is, I suppose, there's rarely answers already sitting waiting for us in the precedent. So we have to, as with the advent and implementation of any new technology that's really disruptive, really think about it. Think about different ways of guiding products and services to either to be compliant or maybe a way that in a direction that there's less of a hassle, less of a need for regulatory compliance. And then on the other side of it, I do the investments and formation, trying to get that company going and be successful. So
no doubt you're busy, because between the ICOs and the private blockchain regulatory issues and all of that stuff, I know the law side of this is really getting a lot of activity. So, cool. Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott. I'm with AlphaPoint. We are a technology company, a FinTech company. We help financial institutions digitize assets, launch new markets, and manage assets with blockchain technology. We were founded in 2013. We went to market with an exchange solution, a trading venue, and we have over 20 plus exchanges, 20 plus clients in 16 countries on 5 continents. And last year we were accepted into the Partnership for New York City Fund. It's an accelerator program. We were the second blockchain company accepted into it. We were partnered with 7 institutions, including banks, credit card companies, and other technology companies as well. And it was very interesting to see the full spectrum of people that have been focused on this for a very long time, but very incognito. They weren't very public about it, but they did have teams and people tasked with understanding this technology. And then there was people on the other end of the spectrum that were there to just really learn. So as if they've heard about it just a few months previously. So I've been focused on the space since 2013. We're headquartered in New York, and I reside in San Francisco.
And then you've been through an industry that's also gotten a lot of activity since these ICOs with the Ethereum platform as opposed to what was happening before that.
Correct. Yeah. So we've seen a lot of changes in the space. Kind of started with Bitcoin, of course, was kind of the big bang, and from there it just really opened up everybody's imagination on how we can do things differently, more effectively, and exchange data in a more transparent and more frictionless way. And that data can represent anything from value to real-world assets and ICOs, all kinds of stuff.
All right, Vitaly.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Vitaly, and I'm the co-founder of Drone Employee. Actually, our company was started in the university as a research project in robot economics. We engage with robots and give them tasks and transact payments with them and stuff like that. And then our first application were drones because we wanted to just demo what we did in our research. And then we got a lot of traction from that, from the regulators and from operators of drones, and they said, we need a system like that, which is scalable and secure, and that's how we started a company. So now we're in the drone space, and specifically fleet management of drones. So we allow business owners to hire a drone, which means like you can give a task to the drone, and then it approves the routes, transacts with clients, and does all the missions autonomously. So that's what we do.
Hi, I'm Sankaet. I'm the founder of Synapse. We're a banking API and back office automation company. What we do is we partner with multiple banks that want to offer some sort of product to fintech companies and help them automate back office operations around that product. So it could be doing ACH payments or wire payments or even opening up deposit accounts. We help them automate compliance end-to-end, risk mitigation end-to-end, all the AML, BSA stuff end-to-end, and then they can pretty much offer that service to any fintech platform because we offer. We tend to work with few Bitcoin companies, so that's one side how we're related into this. The second side is we find Ethereum to be very intriguing for banking applications. So applications around trustless e-sign or applications around timestamping. We think all of those we could do really well with blockchain. So again, we'll kind of unveil some of those products or talk about them today a little bit as well. But yeah, that's how we're related.
Yeah, I had to do a double take because I'm familiar with Synapse and have known about you guys for a long time. But when I saw you on this panel, I said, Synapse, it's doing stuff on blockchain. Got to see what this is about. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kamal Hubbard. I am a certified fraud examiner, a researcher. I'm certified to examine fraud. And I actually became a certified fraud examiner while at my time at Stanford University's Rock Center for Corporate Governance. And that's when I came in contact with Bitcoin and wanted to learn more about how Bitcoin worked and the underlying technology behind it. And so simultaneously, I was looking into the Jobs Act and how crowdfunding was being legislated and regulated by the government, and came across ICOs and how that was helping fund companies. And I came across a company that was raising funds through a crowd sale, called Tau Media, Tau Records. And I wanted to understand, well, if you're collecting these coins, how are you managing the collection of these coins? And I got in touch with the developer and wanted to know, what are your controls in terms of how you're managing these funds? Is every investor happy with how the funds have been invested? Is everyone receiving their tokens through this crowd sale? And there were no complaints. And from there he said, hey, why don't you join the team, help me with a few things in terms of advising, and I've been a member of the team ever since.
Hello, my name is Kumar. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My exposure to the blockchain is because of two companies which I founded in past. One is called Oxesis Group. It's more than one company because now it's own another Bitcoin companies, mining farms. We own some of the biggest mining farms in Asia. Other than this, the company is also into the enterprise blockchain development. Most of our clients are banks or government. The biggest client which we have is obviously Government of India and a Government of Rajasthan and some other state governments. But more than this, it's because it's more like B2B company, which is not so exciting. It's maybe good to make money. But what excites me most or what motivates me to most to build a second company in a blockchain space utilizing more P2P distributed kind of system is called Kasha. So Kasha is a company which I just made like maybe 8 months. It's 8-month-old company. Why I say company? Because it's been profitable from his first transaction. And what it's using just the blockchain technology potentials which exist, and gives users something which can be achieved also by using the financial rails. But by doing so, what Kasha is doing, that giving them, using the opportunity which exists in the cryptocurrency world and trying to translate into the average world for the average consumer who are not exposed with the blockchain or Bitcoin businesses. And we will talk more about this in this panel. Thank you.
So I'm going to skip around a little bit so we don't get into a monotonous of in one after the other. And Scott, I'm going to start with you this time, and give me your sense of what this.
Business isn't as usual, right? And so, as we all know, in the past, you had to have a trusted intermediary in order to exchange value, counterparty risk, and all that. And that goes away with the blockchain. You can just point to the blockchain and see who owns what. So that whole concept of needing that trusted intermediary goes away, and that's extremely disruptive. As far as, when I think of disruption, also I think of the innovator's dilemma, and we've seen disruption. Obviously, we all know the examples, right? From Netflix and blockchain, Blockbuster, Skype and VoIP versus the old phone companies, and nobody wants to get Ubered. And the financial industry, financial institutions, financial services companies are filled with very, very smart people. And so, as I said, they've had their eye on this for quite a while. And going back to the innovator's dilemma, you have to disrupt internally, otherwise you're going to get disrupt externally. And there's a lot of people focused on that. And if that means that if a particular department that was once profitable goes away because you've implemented technology that makes you more efficient, that's a tough decision to make, but that's what they're doing. So they're looking at things where there used to be profit centers that they see that, well, that's probably not going to be sustainable moving forward. And they're implementing technologies that will both make the institutions much leaner and disrupt themselves from within.
Yeah, and Vitaly, we'll pick up on that as well. When you think of disruption, again, it's to me, it's always the who is being disrupted.
Yeah.
A lot of times there's this just thrown out there, oh, it's disrupting but who in particular is being disrupted in your case with your drone employee company?
So for our case specifically, we just basically create the new market because there were no drones before and there were no drone filming and inspections and deliveries. And for us, it doesn't really...
Well, maybe let me ask it differently in your
Yeah.
case, because you are into a new industry. So what are your clients using drones for?
Yep.
And what were they using before there were drones?
So the biggest application is drone filming. And before that, they just could film themselves with GoPro. So basically, that was the application, but the closest you could get.
Disrupting GoPros.
Yeah, but as the drones appeared, now people started flying drones manually. That's what we are now disrupting with automation. So in general, sometimes I feel like people mix the disruption and innovation. So maybe yeah, most of technologies are just step-by-step innovations rather than disruption, including blockchain, as it was originated from a peer-to-peer networks, and like the research on those was like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
There's something. I always hate sounding like the old guy. But when blockchain really started coming around, I went back and thought about disruption, although we didn't call it that for a very long time. But the idea of, well, the innovator being able to say, hey, I can do something for less and I can do it better, right? And suddenly a business process gets disrupted. Those companies were successful. But what we see, where the real power is if you can take something that's centralized and decentralize it, right? Instead of going to a Sears or to a Target, you can go to an eBay, where suddenly anybody anywhere can sell to anybody anywhere. So there's a platform, and yes, eBay's over here and a few other places, but ultimately the nature of that disruption is a decentralization. And the force of that disruption, because it's decentralizing, is, at least in my, seems much to an order of magnitude more powerful, both in what it does to the entrenched players and also in terms of the profitability of what you can bring to bear.
Well, when I look
And
at
blockchain is,
sometimes-
by design, a decentralizing disruptive force. That I guess would be my...
Well, look, disruption is always something that is easier to see in hindsight than it is at the moment it's happening. So sometimes when I think about a lot of these things, I think of them as evolutionary steps, because we hope for the grander vision, but really until it happens, it really doesn't happen right away. So in the case of eBay, that was still a centralized marketplace. Yes, it was a flea market. People came to the center of the town, and that town was eBay. But it's now, as we're seeing, wow, what if they didn't ever have to go to a central place? So I don't know if that will be disruptive. The reality is, from a customer perspective, I'm not sure there is any disruption. From a seller perspective, there may be a whole lot of disruption, as you're saying.
Yeah, I would add to this, if you guys don't mind. A little bit more.
Go with
Okay. One of the projects that we're working on, you may have read in the news, is the Royal Mint and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange is bringing a new product to market, and this product is called the RMG, Royal Mint Gold. They're digitizing gold and putting it on a blockchain. So why would somebody do that? Well, you could think about, I'm not a gold expert, and I need to read up more on how the markets were working prior to this, but from what I understand, the London gold market basically set the price twice a day. Now, with RMG, what you have is a digital representation of an asset, which lives in the physical world. It's gold, okay? It's one gram of gold. This digital asset lives on a blockchain, so blockchains provide the provenance and transparency that you're looking for. That asset will be exchanged in a trading venue for real-time price discovery and liquidity. And now you have an asset that was you had a piece of paper that represented something, and it wasn't as easy to transact with that. Now you actually have a digital asset living on a distributed network, and not only can it retain that store of value that it's always had, but it may actually become something that you could transact in the form of something called money. So, and that could be disruptive.
Yeah, and look, the gold story is a big one. So, by the way, what you're hearing from him has really been a really big story in the blockchain world. There's a number of big companies, Royal Mint, CME, I believe.
Yeah, so it was Royal Mint, CME. They've been working on this for a while. CME is another example of a company that's had their finger on the pulse for years, but they didn't tell anybody. They were just behind the scenes. And then when we met them, we figured out that they knew quite a bit.
What was your role?
And so my role?
Yeah.
So I'm VP of sales. So I'm the B2B sales guy. So he mentioned BitGo. So it's BitGo and Alpha Point. We're providing the blockchain trading venue, and Royal Mint and CME are the ones that are bringing this to market.
Yeah, so I just wanted to speak to what you said about centralization versus disruption, which is not always a good thing. And the biggest hurdle that even Bitcoin has today is the fact that when you start decentralizing governance, things get murky for end customers. So yes, customers don't care if something's centralized or decentralized, which is, for better or for worse, the outcome for blockchain because consumers don't care. What consumers really care about is, are they getting a good service that's reliable? And eBay didn't provide that, even though it was distributed a little bit more than Amazon. Amazon was able to do quality control better because governance happened in a very centralized environment. When you look at Android and Apple, Apple provides a more consistent product because it's a very centralized governance structure. Android has more issues around security. Android has more issues around quality control. When it comes to banking, you're going to have the same issue. If you have a centralized banking infrastructure, you can, for better or for worse, really ensure what the quality would be. At least it's consistent. It might be crappy, but it's consistent.
And by the way, this is a very good point on this notion of drinking the Kool-Aid on decentralizing everything.
Yeah.
There are things that, and there's a lot of things that probably shouldn't be decentralized.
Well, depends, right? So when it comes to governance, I think it's fair to say most likely decentralization is not a good thing because quality control gets harder. But when it comes to consumer choice, decentralization is a good thing. When it comes to the internet in general, decentralization is a good thing because when you start looking at North Korea or China or maybe even America at some point, governments being able to control the bandwidth or even what applications or websites you get access to is just it's a basic human right issue, right? So again, like it's case by case. So again, I'd be very I'd be very, very careful before I say decentralization is always the pattern and is always a good thing. Sometimes larger, bulky, whale-like centralized authorities are good. The reason why American federal government would not fall apart is because it's slow and it's bloated. Otherwise, we would have been a completely different world today. So sometimes centralized authorities, when it comes to governance, are way superior than a decentralized, disrupted system.
And we're going to touch on these criteria in a little bit as well, because I want to dig in deeper. So we're talking disruption now?
Yeah. Well, going back to disruption, I think when we look at disruption, we think about how the landscape is going to change with these new players entering into the marketplace. But what it also creates is an opportunity for collaboration. So the existing players in a marketplace, I mean, they have employees, their employees have families, they have livelihoods, and that needs to be recognized. How can we take the old established industry knowledge and marry it with the new information and the new innovation and possibly find a meeting of the mind somewhere in between and collaborate and compromise? There's that opportunity, but we still have to recognize at its core, disruption is about innovation, and we should respect that and not hold business back in any way, shape, or form.
So for me, I'll not go into the debate of decentralization or centralization. That's maybe the next questions coming. I'm sure you will have in your list. For me, it's very easy and very simple. Maybe people can agree or not. The disruption and innovation for me is that once the technology touches the people who are standing on the corner, maybe does not even know about the technology. And when you touches their lives and you bring something change in that, without that person knowingly that he is using something, that's called disruption. You can do it in a centralized way or a decentralized way. People really don't care. Because what's they care? People have enough things to care about. You know, so their life is going 9 to 5 in a very routine way. So for me, it's very simple. Once you touch someone's lives, and for me, the example was like I was in London and I met a Kasha customer, and he was explaining me about that how he's using Kasha to send money to India like without any fee, and I was like smiling. And for me, that's a disruption or innovation, because then the person doesn't know what he's using, but still it's affecting his everyday life, and that's a disruption for me.
Awesome. So it'd be great to get to and Adam, this is maybe not going to be your strength, because you're not using a blockchain inside, but for you guys, where Can you give us some specifics on the kinds of blockchains you're actually using? So I want to get out a little bit of the blockchain as a term, because each of them have characteristics. So again, let's start with you, Kumar, since you have the mic.
Thanks. So yeah, we are using blockchain for various reasons. So which one? Coming to, like, in case of Kasha, we are using the Bitcoin blockchain. So because Kasha uses the market valuation which Bitcoin holds and the circulation which Bitcoin holds.
Just to be clear,
Yeah.
Kasha is a remittance application. Money movement.
Money movement application. It could be from Texas to New York. It doesn't. It's
I'm paying somebody on the other
you are just paying someone else, yeah, and that's all. But you don't even know that what it's going, because underlying platform does not touches you. You just know that you have to send money to India from US. This is what you pay. This is what you receive, and you don't have to pay anything in between. And nobody is gonna eat your money in between. It's very transparent, very nice for. We make on average 3 to 4% on each transaction without charging customer anything, just to give a revenue idea. It's a magical money, and that's what I say. That's what innovation and disruption mean. When you create things which looks magical, but it's not magical. It's something where the potential was there, but it was untouched. Because you can use the same. It's more important that if you have a sword, it's not. Maybe you can open a bottle with that, but but if you use something which for that the technology has been designed, or it have a potential to do that, you will get that benefit out of it. So, and that's what Kasha is doing. Just Kasha is a very, very simple application. It uses the Bitcoin blockchain to transfer your value. And by doing so, we have two actually consumers. So one is the average consumer who just need to transfer his money from country A to country B, from USD to say INR. Let's take a live example. And then we have a people, tiny percentage of people in the world who know about the blockchain or the Bitcoin. And what Kasha do? Just Kasha use his algorithm to find these people who are interested in. If I ask you a question, people in this room who have a Bitcoin, and how many people have you paid Bitcoin to buy a coffee? Okay, forget about coffee. Someday I didn't drink coffee. How many people have buy a sandwich with Bitcoin? So what? You guys don't eat? You eat. But the point is that you have enough things to buy your lunch. You don't need Bitcoin for that. So why people are using Bitcoin every day, and the 80% people who are, and you have like in a day, if you see the coin and market cap, in a day people are moving 500 million worth of Bitcoin in 24 hours. Speculation. So the only tool which Bitcoin have right now is a speculation, because that does not need two party. That needs one party. And you can sit whole day in your bedroom or in your study, and you can do speculation. And that's the consumer which Bitcoin have. It have nothing to do with the average consumer like you and me, because we want to buy a coffee, we want to pay our family so that they can buy coffee, they can buy lunch. So what Kasha does, Kasha just find these kind of people who want to speculate, and the people who want to transfer money with each other, so that a speculator can speculate better. Like if you want to speculate, you don't really care to whom you want to speculate. You just want to care that you bought at $1, you want to sell at $2. That's only you care about. You don't care about any poor, any hunger problem, or anything else. That's all. Yeah.
I didn't want to get to the business model. I promised myself we wouldn't talk business models tonight, and I hate it because it's an area I love, but I'm going to move it on.
Yeah, so we talk into this. So just to conclude, the question was that we use the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, but because Oxys is more enterprise company and the clients are more corporates, then we go into the different blockchains like Monax. Some of the we are working with Monax, working with multi-chain, Ethereum, Hyperledger. So 4 of them we have used so far. No, not the Kasha. It's the Oxys group for different banks and different governments. Yeah.
So Tau utilizes the Bitcoin blockchain, but also utilizes aspects of other projects, like utilizes smart contracts for settlements, and it also utilizes proof of stake. So the token holders, the more tokens you hold, the more that you realize your total earnings and total holdings through the transactions that take place in the exchanging of coins, but also in the exchange of the assets, whether it's music and in those things that are actually stored on the blockchain itself. Is there anything else?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay.
Well, we're indirectly working with Bitcoin blockchain, though we don't use it directly ourselves. And then we're building out a couple of projects in Ethereum. You know?
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so for you, the Ethereum, are you using the public Ethereum blockchain or the private Ethereum blockchain?
Public.
Public.
We.
And you mentioned that when you're talking about the financial.
I won't shit on
services-
private blockchains today.
Well,
but
you know that there's the Ethereum, I forget the name of it. Enterprise, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you working at all with that group? Or
Mm-mm.
what's happening? Okay.
No. For us, we see a couple of applications that would benefit banking. One is just the immutability in itself, to be able to make sure that contracts don't change on people, statements don't change on
And you're
people.
making Ethereum for that.
Yeah. And then the second is,
Sorry, I just want to hit, you're saying immutability, they just had a rollback they had a fork.
I know.
I don't feel that was immutable.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was very mutable.
We're-
That was as mutable as it gets.
We are.
So why are you using
We
that for immutability?
we are very worried about that.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Uh,
And I just want to be clear because it's
Yeah.
sometimes confusing when I hear
Yeah.
terms that have been associated with Bitcoin being applied to other
Yeah,
blockchains.
yeah.
There's always some
Well, so with
wiggle.
Ethereum, you can set your own rules. So the crappier rules are the crappier system is. Anyways, we won't go into that. So the second thing is, we think we can build out some interesting e-sign applications for either joint accounts or multi-sig accounts, or just signing contracts in general with Ethereum plus IPFS. So that's fairly interesting. Yeah.
Sorry. We use Ethereum blockchain, and we use only a public blockchain, as well as IPFS for drone air traffic control. So we have two parts of the system. First is the air traffic controller that calculates the route for the drone when it gets the task. And then instead of storing the whole GPS coordinates of the route in the Ethereum blockchain, which could vary and harder to use, we store the route on the IPFS network. And then just the hash of the IPFS file we store in smart contract on Ethereum. So to the question about private and public blockchains, we now do believe in public blockchains. We had a hybrid approach last year. So we were thinking to use a public system for clients to get the drone ordered and to do all the transactions, but then to use a private blockchain for communication between the drones themselves and air traffic control and things like that. But then we were thinking, there was the same discussion when the internet appeared. There was intranets and internet, and then we all know that most of the companies still use internet, like the TCP/IP protocol. And they just build the security system on top of it. They don't, most of the companies don't use intranets now. So that's what we did, basically. We used public Ethereum blockchain, and then on top of it, we built a security mechanism where we could store the routes in IPFS network and encrypt them with a public Ethereum key. So that's how we use it.
Scott, Alpha Point.
Sure. We're asking about public and private chains, or how
which ones you guys work with?
we work with. Okay. So we're interoperable with just about all of them. So Ethereum, Hyperledger, we're better be careful everything I say. We'll start dropping some other names there who we're talking to, and we are. Yeah, get the exclusive here. Yeah. Can we hard fork that? Can we hard fork it and overwrite it? We're actively developing a proprietary blockchain ourselves as well. So it's really interesting when it comes.
Is that proprietary public or private?
It'll be a private permissioned solution on our proprietary technology. And it makes sense because public chains do serve certain use cases very well. And for other use cases, they just don't work. They don't fit. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and good reasons for that. So, we're a FinTech company. We're a technology company. We're not really married to any one religion, right? And we're there to serve our clients. And we're very agnostic when it comes to these things. And in the right use case, we'll be able to use our proprietary technology. And then in other use cases, if a client says, hey, can you interoperate with Hyperledger or Ethereum or Ethereum Enterprise, we don't mind, because the interoperability is very easy to do.
So Adam, look, there's a lot of hype around various aspects of blockchains. There's whether it's private blockchains or the ICOs that are happening. Can you give me some examples, at least that you've seen, and I'll ask this of all of you as well, of problem categories that have been overhyped and that are unlikely to deliver on the promises made around using blockchains to solve those problems?
None. It's strange.
Fantastic.
It's pretty surprising.
Great. Thank you very much.
If you mean areas where the legal impediments probably.
Well, since you're a lawyer, let's go there.
Well, it is really hard to know what's overhyped, and the reason is that.
If it's legally not feasible, so.
Things that are legally not feasible become legally feasible. Very often, and more than you think. And every once in a while, I have this feeling of optimism that breaks out. I'll give you an example in my history. So I represented what was the world's largest ISP called Netcom. We're going to go back. And Netcom, because it was the world's largest at the time, we're talking 94, 95, also got all the really interesting litigation, like the Church of Scientology saying, hey, you've got these Usenet groups, they've got our secret documents on them, we're going to hold you responsible. And the problem was that really when you looked at the law, and the law was ancient, a bright lawyer would conclude they're responsible. And that's what the bright courts actually said, even though it just didn't seem right or fair, and even though that result meant really nobody could be an ISP and host these Usenet groups, because there's no way, how could you possibly police 100 million conversations and 100 million and a billion pieces of content? How could you do that? There would be no real internet as we know it. And lo and behold, Congress broke out and passed two laws that really changed the face of everything. One was the DMCA Act, which changed what it meant to be a infringing participant in a person who's helping out in the infringement of a copyright, and the other one was it's called in shorthand now Section 230, meaning that most state laws don't apply when it comes to somebody that has an internet service. If somebody is alleging that they are sort of assisting in libel, in libel, or in a lot of the other kind of state acts. So this is how you can have Craigslist, and somebody might list something or say something bad, and yet Craigslist won't necessarily be responsible for it. And it literally enabled what we see today as being the internet. So things change. I didn't think in a million years there would be federal preemption on state-level money transmitter laws. In the United States, we have a problem, and that was, back in 2013, FinCEN, which regulates money service businesses and money transmitters at the federal level, said in March 2013, hey, Bitcoin, I've got good news for you. We're going to regulate you as if you have some legal uses. And because you quack like a duck, and we regulate ducks, you're a duck. We're going to say that you're a currency for our purposes. And that was kind of nice, because at least it was a major government body saying, we're not going to run you into the ground as some sort of illegal alternate currency, but we're going to expect you to be regulated. The bad news then is that it turned out there were 48 states that regulated money transmitter services, okay? And that has now been increased to 49. And they all have different laws. And it's unclear where different business models, like some of the ones you're hearing about, fall. That said, now the Federal Comptroller of Currency is talking about some ways in which we can have not quite federal preemption over these state regulations in order to enable innovative technologies, but a new, almost a new subset of banking that would allow some of the same kind of federal capabilities that federal banks have to be able to operate in states without being separately regulated under those money transmission laws. It's still nascent, hasn't really come back. We have a new administration, I don't know where it's, but it can happen if the business, and usually one of the ways it happens is people like this create a business model that's so compelling, you go, no, there's got to be an eBay. You got to have a Craigslist. We got to do something for this. The biggest problem isn't that I would say blockchain technology is overhyped for certain business models. It's that the industries that they're going after are the hardest to sell into. You want to do a new identity system? You want to replace the DMV as a source of identity in the United States? That's going to take a while. And I don't care how good your technology is or how many bazillions of dollars you're going to save. And you can save a lot. I mean, anybody who's said it, or how much consumers love it. I don't think people really love going to the DMV to get a new driver's license. Okay? I don't think business owners like all the difficulty they have at the register and at bars trying to figure out how old you are, who you are. Okay? So it's just prime for disruption. But trying to sell into that on a state-by-state or at a federal level, but things happen. Things happen. So healthcare, one of the last projects I did as a developer of technology before I became a lawyer was claims processing for WellPoint, which is now Anthem, one of the biggest. When a friend of mine went into this in 2009, I found out that claims processing and IT innovation in that area had moved this much. Like, and we have clients in the area, and there's all these reasons why that's kind of true, but it's still kind of true. Now, Philips has had an initiative, and other companies have had these initiatives to look at blockchain to treat sort of medical records as digital assets, right? And use these cryptographic controls. I don't think the possibility of the technology's application is overhyped. However, it's a heck of a sales cycle. It's a very challenging.
Well,
so I'd say that's.
You have to sell an ecosystem, not just one company.
And in that, there are regulatory hurdles. And the funny thing there is I don't think that the regulatory hurdles are as difficult as the impression of the regulatory hurdles. Meaning, when we talk about, for instance, healthcare data, we talk about the regulations. And when you hear people in the area, they go, oh, it's so difficult, it's so difficult. I'm not sure it's nearly that difficult. It's the impression and the coordination of dealing with that within large enterprises and between those enterprises that have, for instance, stymied a lot of data portability capability within healthcare. So I guess, and I would say that's true for every area.
You're not believing the overhyped thing quite yet.
I don't think that you do get, and I know everybody in the panel's seen this, where it's like, I can use a blockchain to balance my checkbook. And you're going, why? You know, where does that, I mean, maybe there's something in that, but, you know, for a while we were hearing like, I can use a blockchain. And it's like, well, you know, SQL does that kind of okay. I'm sorry, the better. You know, there's a lot where you just kind of go, and I've actually had clients who started building, trying to disrupt a particular industry that's ripe for it, and they started with a blockchain effort, and then looked at it long and hard and said, we don't need that. And they went back to their investors and they go, listen, I know you're kind of getting in on the hype here. But very successfully said, look, you know, let me graph this out for you. And the investor said, you know, I think you're right. At least right now, that doesn't make the most sense. They didn't pivot to a different business plan or a different target market. And they didn't pivot because of regulatory issues. I will say that because, and this speaks, I think, directly to your question, there are some regulators that really like to know the technology and must know the technology. And I'll finish the answer because it's kind of interesting. And it's not just about blockchain. So you might have read, I'm trying to remember, it's about the Flash Boys. There's a great book, Michael Lewis. And it had a lot to do with how people in programmatic trading were moving their computers slightly closer to the exchange, because the fiber optic cables that would take the trades could move slightly faster. So instead of 3 nanoseconds, it's 2 nanoseconds, and this would make all the difference, and I'm not exaggerating here. And their technical solution to this, called IEX, by the way, I think was the dark pool. Somebody can correct me, was it IEX? Great. Was to take a piece of fiber 40 miles long and spool it. And they gave everybody that would go into their trading floor the same spool of fiber, so that it took the same amount of time to execute a trade. This was a huge innovation, and they got hundreds of millions of trades a day in no time. And they said, we're geniuses, which they are, and they're wonderful people. Well, I hope I don't have clients who think they are. But what they decided is, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to actually, instead of having a private exchange, what's called a dark pool, I want to take this and have what NASDAQ does publicly. The problem is you've got to interoperate with other public exchanges, what have you. The SEC had to understand their technology cold, which took a long time, I think about a year at least, before they could actually say, yes, you can go do this. And it took a lot of difficulty. Can you imagine trying to understand blockchain and trying to get a grasp of that? And yet they're doing it, and the people pushing that, as you probably know, to a very large degree, is T0 and Overstock. But NASDAQ is also doing huge plays in this area. But they've really got to be comfortable, for a whole bunch of different reasons, that your technological implementation is going to meet with regulatory compliance, and the SEC is one where that is, the technical aspects are quite high.
Cool. Overhyped. Can I see some hands for an overhyped?
Well, so there are
Just to make my question sound completely distorted.
well, so there are two sections. Portions of these are overhyped, and then they're underhyped as well. The overhyped ones are any consumer-facing application. It's fairly complicated for end customers to understand. So if you expect the fact that Bitcoin or blockchain would be an accepted protocol at multiple different companies, and consumers can just grab their virtual currency and go anywhere to do whatever they want, that's a hard sell. If you build an end-to-end network to say, I'm going to connect all the dots, and a consumer wouldn't even feel the pain, as you know, with any payment network, getting somebody to adopt your payment network is a very expensive endeavor. So you being able to achieve critical mass like PayPal or somebody else with that model, again, is customer acquisition cost is fairly high. Regulatory hurdles are massive. For you to be able to onboard a customer on a Bitcoin blockchain platform, you'd have to KYC them, and you'd have to KYC them really well. So those hurdles exist. So I don't understand why people still fund those projects. The ones that are underhyped are, in a nutshell, what blockchain's trying to teach all of us is like better distributed computing with better consensus protocols, better storage mechanisms. So what's really underhyped about this is a distributed internet. I don't think we're moving fast enough in that direction. We don't have a good incentive structure figured out for people who would host these applications. And I think this is where the biggest opportunity is today, because for the end customer, there's no disruption per se. They would still go on a website like how they do usually, and they'd be routed to whatever application they need to go to. So consumer adoption is going to be really easy. You just have to figure out a good incentive structure for hosting providers, which would be you and I, to be able to host these applications. And
There's a company called Blockstack that's doing a lot in this area, and in the storage area, it's like 4 companies attacking it.
Well,
Storage,
you need like, what you really have to build is an AWS kind of infrastructure that makes deploying applications on distributed internet like a click of a button. And a lot of people are trying that, but we're like not close. And maybe we're not close because, again, we don't have the incentive structure figured out as well. 21 being another company that is trying to figure this out in a very interesting way.
I think the latest iteration of 21 is, if you want to ask me a question, by the way, if you want to ask me a question, pay me $20.
Yeah. So yeah, again, like I think that is still undervalued. We need to probably invest a lot more money and try to scale up to an AWS analogous infrastructure in like next 4 or 5 years, but I don't think we're close.
That's hard.
I think it's both. Bitcoin came out of the financial crash, right? And if nothing was illegal, and if we could just do whatever we wanted with anybody we ever wanted and buy anything we ever wanted, you really wouldn't need Bitcoin, because then there would just be no regulation and you'd just be able to do whatever you wanted. So from that perspective, the world has changed. You now have this ability to have digital scarcity that didn't exist before, and you have the ability to transact peer-to-peer without a central intermediary preventing you from doing it. So that is, you can't overhype that. I mean, that's fundamental change. From what is overhyped, and what you guys have touched on, is how fast this technology is going to change everybody's life. So, especially the Bitcoin maximalists were like, oh, it's to the moon and the world's changed, and when I wake up tomorrow, it's nobody's going to recognize the world that we live in. But of course, that was way, way, way overhyped. As far as like the business applications, you guys have touched on this as well. There's been a confluence of technology advances that enable us to do what we can do with blockchain distributed ledger technologies. So the advancements in cryptography, the advancements in broadband connectivity, has enabled us to move data in ways that just weren't possible 20 years ago. Previous database structures, you had databases acting like messaging systems and messaging systems acting like databases, and whoever owned the database owned the asset. You used to build all these firewalls to protect that database from getting manipulated. That's shifted. Now you have a digital asset that lives on a distributed network that's encrypted with public and private keys. So now he who owns the keys to the asset owns the asset. It's no longer he who owns the database owns the asset. That's a fundamental shift. And so you're going to see.
So underhyped, overhyped?
Again, I wouldn't say it's not overhyped in certain contexts. In certain contexts, it's definitely overhyped. But how we move forward and do things differently, I think there's been a fundamental change. Yeah.
I'll just take. So it's like I think part of it is disappointment about how much time it takes, and being the lawyer gets asked to draft the contracts and negotiate them when you're doing something like CME or No, but my point is things do take time. Whether you're a coder developing code, whether or not you're people trying to work on a new idea, whether or not you're trying to hire, God forbid you're trying to hire somebody who really knows their stuff. Look at the internet model. I mean, I saw a video on, Ethernet before '94. It was, right? Commercial internet breaks out in '94. It starts to build up. When are you gonna be able to watch videos on the internet? iFilm, Atom Film, I think was late '98, starting '99. Couldn't really work successfully as a platform. Really, it starts in 2003, when it really gets kind of comfortable and capable, right?
So maybe it wasn't overhyped at the moment it happened. It just took a long time to come.
Were we right that everybody can see media in a more cost or with greater selection? Sure, these things take time.
Yeah. So just to conclude this, because I think we discussed everything overhyped on. For me, yes, definitely. If we just talk about blockchain or blockchain technologies, yes, it's definitely overhyped. 95% of things which people are doing right now, you can do with this simple databases. And actually, they are databases. That's all. Encrypted databases, I don't see more than that. If we talk about the Bitcoin blockchain, yeah, there are some fundamental changes which are true, and you cannot overhype them. If you leave the Bitcoin price thing, what people think about the price, or the people who hold Bitcoin, or what they think the value goes, maybe it could be overhyped or underhyped. It depends on your expectation. If you hold a value, you want to grow, wish that it's become millions or billions. But other than things like the concepts of having a private blockchain where you have 2-3 participants and giving consumer services, they are definitely overhyped. Because it's as a technology also person, I see that even if you do it there, you are not giving consumer that really wanted the control, because still you have the data and you can change that. It just doesn't matter because you distributed with 3 participants the encrypted data, and you say now it's become fully secure and nobody can change it. Yes, you can change it. And you can change it. What consumer will do from his side? Okay, maximum consumer can say yes, yeah, things have been changed, but what's the value he can get? He have to go to a lawyer and then find, hey, the guys have been changed my data. Do you think really consumer do that? No. And still you can do that with the encrypted databases. You can give them the encryption key and say, hey, this is the encryption key, decrypted in a way that if we change so, it will change. So I don't see the real value of the blockchain technology there. Yeah, but there are some fundamental places where I see the blockchain really do sense, the technology makes sense. The banking infrastructure, where it's initially designed to have all the banking infrastructure, use blockchain technology as the infrastructure for the banking. Something similar what happened with the telecommunication with the internet. Before we tried to run internet on telecommunication companies, normal PSTN wires, then we had this technology inversion where we changed the internet and we built technology, we built the companies on top of that. But it uses a single protocol. But I don't see until it's happening anywhere in the near future, and until it's not happening, yes, right now we are selling it as much as can as a consultant.
Well, that's not a fair comparison. Why we moved to why we moved to Object 5 was to reduce latency, not to increase it. If you want to build out banking on blockchain, what you're saying is everything's going to take a lot longer.
Blockchain technologies, but we need to carefully evaluate what. If the blockchain technology is still controlled by the bank, and you are going to consumer and saying, hey, we are giving you the capacity, you control your money, that's false. You are selling him something which is not true. Still, we control that. So we can tell consumer whatever we want, but that's not the promise of the blockchain, which made it famous that the asset or the value is controlled by the individual.
But then why would you build out a banking infrastructure on blockchain?
So that's why if you build a banking infrastructure in which you give the control to the consumer.
Then why do you have a bank if you make the consumer own the asset? Then let them put cash in their pocket.
So you have to decide. You have to decide that you need that entity after having the technology or not. It's a decision need to be made once you have the new infrastructure.
You do realize it's just digital cash. So if you have to protect it yourself, then it's like carrying paper currency in my wallet. Do you want to go back to that world is the question.
It's not the same thing. If you give consumer a better way to manage this.
Again, so it doesn't make sense to build out, just to iterate this, it doesn't make sense to build out a banking infrastructure on blockchain. Number one, it's going to be super latent. If you're going to give consumer 100% control of their assets, then the security that a bank provides plus FDIC, none of them apply anymore. So again, it doesn't make any sense. Now, what could happen is some of the applications that banks do provide to end customers, like access to their statements when they're about to sign a loan application, making sure that those things don't get edited over time. Maybe those things can be used. That's where blockchain can be used as an augmentation to an existing banking system. It would not replace and build a new banking system with a core that would be completely blockchain. It just wouldn't make any sense.
My question is straight here, just to this point. What difference it makes to the consumer if you have their bank statement on a blockchain and not in a simple encrypted database? What benefit consumer?
Okay, we've actually only got a couple of minutes, so.
Hey, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, I love this, and I kind of wish we. There was a question that was going to lead into this conversation, but unfortunately we're running out of
That's
time.
fine.
So, quick round the horn. Optimistic or pessimistic on the blockchain evolution or revolution, as the top spell says.
I'll start.
Please.
Thanks. Well, in general, I'm an optimistic person, but at this point in time, blockchain technology is still maturing. We could go out on the street right now, ask someone, hey, do you know what Bitcoin is? Do you know what blockchain technology is? And they can look at you like, I don't know what you're talking about.
This is Palo Alto.
Oh, yeah, we are in Palo Alto, and we have an astute
Babysitters are paid.
population. But
Bitcoin.
let's just say in general Main Street, you could do that and someone would look at you like, I don't know what you're talking about. And the technology needs to mature, the legislation and regulation behind it needs to mature, so we actually know when I say blockchain, or if I say a distributed ledger technology, people know what I'm talking about. Or if I say smart contract, there's an actual definition under the law in terms of what a smart contract is. And then once those things start to solidify and become more clear, I think the information will take away some of the hype, and we can be a little bit more optimistic in terms of where things are actually going. Yeah, let me use this one.
So yeah, of course we're all, I guess, very optimistic about blockchain, and I do believe in applications for blockchain beyond financial technology as well. That was what I want to stress.
And you're
So,
using it
yeah.
beyond financial technology. Scott?
Yeah, I mean, we're a growth company in this, kind of banking on this stuff, taking hold, adding value.
Whether or not you believe it's
Tremendous value. It's going to be huge.
Huge. Huge.
Is your
The
practice
dollar,
beyond blockchain?
a disaster. Yeah, no, I still have non-blockchain clients, so it's not a hedge so much as just a historical history.
So, optimistic?
I'm optimistic. I think in 3 years we'll sit here and there'll be a long list of business cases that have been implemented that have made monumental changes to those industries and to the companies. I think you're going to see massive changes in huge supply chain and supply chain management, which we didn't get a chance to talk to it at all. And I don't have enough clients in the area. So if anybody does that, let me know. But I also think that what you have is this sort of genetic algorithm of entrepreneurs and innovation, as well as major players. And the breakout is not something you expect. The breakout is usually not something that you terribly expect. And that's why I don't try to be too smart about it. It's just when you have this many smart people going at and a decentralizing apparatus, really, I think we're going to be very, very impressed with that list. But it's going to take a few years.
Okay.
Well, optimistic about blockchain being able to bring down audit costs in general, which is where most of the utility for companies like Alpha Point come from. Very, very pessimistic about consumer-facing applications for blockchain for multiple reasons. Too hard for consumers to understand. Second, the regulatory burden for KYCing somebody is just massive. So for those reasons, probably not going to take off. Really hopeful that distributed internet is something we would work on more. Yeah.
Definitely optimistic. But obviously we are at very, very nascent stage. It's taking time. We need to do a lot of job around security, because until we don't make those basic infrastructure for the new technology, obviously it's very hard to get it reach where we want it. And that's what we are seeing. So once we have those basic infrastructure built out, you can drive your Ferrari.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hopeful
Yeah.
that in 3 years' time, this isn't possible. That just like today, we wouldn't have a conference of people talking about, I use a relational database underneath my application, and we're just talking about the applications and the problems that are being solved. Then we will have gotten to the place where I really think blockchain will have come to mature. But with that, thank you to this great panel. We got a lot of different perspectives. Got a little rough and tumble in there, which we like. I wish we'd gotten more. My fault. But thank you very much to all of you for coming. And I think maybe you have some questions that you might let.
So first of all, I think it'd be a great idea if we could all get together in 3 years' time and run this panel in perspective of where we are in 3 years' time. So I'm going to try and manifest that. But thank you, everyone. It was fantastic. Thanks so much, Pierre, for managing it. And also, Pierre brought up a really great point earlier today. And sometimes I don't self-promote enough, but we do have a YouTube channel, which is FinTech Silicon Valley on YouTube. We have recorded every panel that we've had since September last year. Some of them have been, well, all of them actually have been fantastic. And if you want to access information about the blockchain, Bitcoin, FinTech, go to those, not only the panels, but I've usually interviewed almost every one of the panelists, and those brief interviews I feel are just as significant because it's much more of a human context as far as where they come from personally. So,
and they're really digestible. I've gone through a
He's
lot of
just a-
them. I love them. I actually learned some stuff about China I wanted to know about from a few of the panelists she had on the last one. So I'm a big fan.
So if you can't make all the panels, and already we've had some incredible panels, totally incredible, and I'm totally blessed that I get to see all of them and experience all of them, but we record them, and we record them so that everyone can have access to them for free. So please, you will get an email after this panel when this video is posted, and the YouTube channel link will be on it. Please subscribe, and as Pierre's just found this new wealth of knowledge, even though he's been moderating panels here for a while, I'm sorry that I don't self-promote all our social media, but I do a lot of it, and that is, and thanks to Jeremy, who obviously doesn't get very much credit. He actually films and does all the post-production of all the panels. So please have a look at those, and I'm sure you'll be educated, and that is totally free in your own time. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay.